and to talk about rational emotive behavior therapy, which is a form of cognitive behavioral therapy. Just to briefly contextualize things, Albert Ellis developed rational emotive behavioral therapy. He was initially trained as an analyst and practiced for 6 years and noticed that his patients sometimes felt better but did not get better. And he wanted to improve upon this so that the talk therapy could be cathartic, but that they weren't getting better. And my supervisor, Dr. Kristen Doyle, often tells us that clients have friends to feel better and therapists to get better. He formalized rational emotive behavior therapy in 1955 and started a nonprofit institute in 1959 here in New York City. In 1960, he introduced this new type of therapy at the American Psychological Association annual convention, and it was not so well received. The prevailing psychotherapeutic modalities at that time were psychoanalysis and behaviorism. Fast forward to the 1980s, and he was ranked as the second most influential psychologist in a study that examined this, and this was published in the American Psychologist. Now I'd like to start with the finger-pointing exercise. I want you to think of a secret that you would not want anyone else to know, not even your best friend. It's a secret, something of which you are ashamed. Your secret could involve an action that you feel particularly ashamed about, or it could be a personal weakness that you would not want anyone else to know. Now continue to think about it. In a moment, I'm going to point to one of you, and I'm going to have you tell the group what this secret is. Oh, no. I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, I'm really not going to ask you to tell your secret, but I do want to discuss how you were feeling when I asked you to reveal this secret to the crowd. What would your feelings have been if I asked you to come up here and tell this group your most deepest, darkest secret? Because we're limited in time, I'm not going to ask you to tell me your feelings, but I will go through some common responses that people have. So some people feel threatened and are thinking, it would be awful if they thought badly of me. I couldn't stand it if they thought badly of me, or I would be a bad person if the room thought that I was a bad person. And when the person is thinking this way, they're likely to feel anxiety. Another common reaction is it would be thinking that consists of, it would be terrible if I did not act in a cooperative manner. I cannot tolerate being non-cooperative. And I'm not a good person if I do not cooperate by disclosing my secret, also resulting in a feeling of anxiety. Another audience member also reported feeling anxious. However, the anxiety was related to a different aspect of the situation. Oh, I'm sorry, we're on to concern. So someone else might have thinking that was slightly different, also may have been thinking that feeling some degree of threat, but then thought, I don't really want to behave in this way, but there's no reason why I must not decline the speaker's invitation to disclose my secret, right? So that would have been an option. If I declined the invitation and other people in the group thought badly of me, that would be unfortunate, but not terrible. Or it's uncomfortable to be disapproved of, but I can stand it. It's hardly unbearable. And finally, I can accept myself in spite of others' disapproval and not put myself down. This person would likely feel concern instead of anxiety. Another common reaction has been anger. So some people might have thought that I was acting unfairly. How dare this woman ask me to reveal my most deepest, darkest secret to a room full of people. This is terrible, this is just awful, I can't stand her behavior, and that I'm a rotten person for asking you to do this. Some of you are thinking that, huh? Finally, Finally, another common reaction is pleasure. So some people might have been thinking, oh, this could help me to grow. I came here to learn. This might be something I can use in my own presentations in the future with students. You know, okay, great. Well, let's do this. I hope she picks me. So the purpose of this exercise is to really drive home the point that feelings and thinking from experience are not intrinsic. If they were intrinsic, you all would have had the same exact reaction and would under any circumstance. There are two types of thinking about something that can happen. There's inferences, which is more like a fact. So in the anxiety examples, there was an inference that this was threatening. So for example, I may be thinking, okay, I'm in a room full of people. You guys are all evaluating me. Is she good? Is she bad? And my supervisor's here. She's like, how is she doing? That's an inference. A belief is an evaluation about that inference. So I could be thinking, oh my gosh, what if this is a room full of brilliant people? What if they don't think I'm brilliant? What if they don't think this speech is effective? That would be awful. I couldn't stand it. My supervisor's here. She's going to think poorly of me. She's not going to want me to come back next week. How would I be feeling if I was thinking that? I'd be an anxious wreck, and I probably wouldn't be doing as good of a job as if I was thinking something like along the lines of, I hope these people like this presentation, but if they don't, I can stand it. Maybe public speaking isn't what I'm best at. There are other things I'm best at. Maybe I can practice and get better, you know, something along those lines. And we all have the propensity to think both rationally and irrationally. And we can go to thinking, our rational beliefs can include that things are terrible. We can demand that things must not exist. We can exhibit frustration, intolerance. And then we can global rate something. So if I don't give a good presentation, that means that I'm not good at what I do, some form of global rating, or I'm less worthwhile as a soon-to-be clinical psychologist. So Ellis developed this theory that was very rooted in philosophy, especially the Stoic philosophers. I always say this wrong. Epictetus, thank you.
You're fired.
And Ellis was often quoted saying, people are not disturbed by things, but by the views which they take of them. And then, of course, by general semantics. And especially that the individual and the environment are inextricably intertwined, and that this implies that there are things that we have control of and that there are things that we do not have control of. So Ellis developed a scientific approach to help clients make a philosophical shift in their thinking. And what I mean by scientific approach is that he operationalized things. We have constructs that can be measured. We have outcomes from research study. REBT represents an evidence-based treatment for a variety of conditions such as depression, anxiety, and anger. The basic model is what we call an ABC model. The A stands for an activating event or adversities, and these are things that we often don't have control of. A C stands for the consequences that accompany the beliefs. The beliefs are what we're thinking and include those evaluative inferences. We have a choice about what we believe about the inferences, and we can either construct preferences or demands. And that the B is really what has the propensity to create human disturbance. And that the C results comes after the B. So the behavioral and emotional consequences come after the thinking. Yeah, okay.
So as individuals, we can get in trouble when we turn healthy preferences into dogmatic demands or musts. So we might think in ways where we tend to awfulize situations. This is the end of the world. This is terrible. Or we tend to engage in I can't stand it-itis. So I can't tolerate failing. And also when we damn ourselves and others and tell ourselves that we're worthless because I have failed. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So when we do have our clients that do think in irrational ways, and this irrational way of thinking is leading to unhealthy negative emotions, which tend to be self-defeating and they could get in the way of our achieving our goals, we'll dispute with our clients these irrational beliefs. And we'll use several different types of disputes to help them make this philosophical shift. So the empirical dispute, when we use this, we ask our clients, where is the evidence that people must like you? Where is it written that all people should respect you? We also have the functional dispute, and this one tends to hit home pretty quickly in terms of the irrationality of the individual's belief. So we'll ask them, how is it helping you to think that people must like you? How is it hurting you to believe that all people should respect you? And after working with the client, they'll be able to see that their current line of thinking is much more harmful than helpful. We also have the logical dispute. Does it logically follow that because you want all people to like you, that therefore they must? Is it logical to believe that all people should like you when in fact they don't? And we also have the philosophical dispute. Even if all people do not like you or respect you, can you still find some happiness? So REBT is a constructivist theory. So we have the ability to construct these irrational beliefs, and we also have the ability to reconstruct our beliefs in order to be more emotionally healthy. Many individuals might misinterpret our theory and think that we're trying to help our clients to feel neutral about adversities, or we're trying to get them to feel emotionless. But that's not the case. We want our clients to change their way of thinking that helps them produce healthy, functional negative emotions when they're faced with an adversity. So for example, I've been working with a client who's feeling depressed about his romantic life and his difficulty moving on from a current relationship and pursuing a new one. We've worked together to help him to feel sad and disappointed rather than depressed, because if I were to sit and say, wow, you should about the situation, he'd probably run out of my office immediately. Whereas we would want him to see that, yes, it's a negative event, but rather than feeling depressed, there's other ways that you could feel about the situation. So the goal isn't, though, to have him be sad or disappointed and be okay, but after reducing the emotional disturbance of depression, the next goal would be helping him to enjoy his life more fully. So once we're able to reduce the depression, then we could help teach him social skills to pursue a new relationship, or to help him feel more comfortable being single and better enjoy his single life. In REBT, we consider self-esteem to be a myth. Self-esteem is rating oneself based on one's behavior or performance. So I did well on this paper, therefore I'm a success, or I failed this test, therefore I'm a failure. In other words, I'm good or I'm bad. But we are too complex to rate ourselves globally with one evaluation. The reality is that everyone in this room is someone who sometimes acts in a good manner and sometimes acts in a bad manner. So if you think about how many actions or behaviors you performed already today, how does it make any logical sense to give oneself a global rating based on one behavior? The answer is that it doesn't. Even if I did well on a test, and therefore I am successful on the test, I'm anxious because what if I fail next time? So this line of thinking leads you to be on this emotional roller coaster where you're rating yourself based on your performance. As a result, in REBT, we promote 3 different kinds of acceptance: unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional other acceptance, and unconditional life acceptance. So unconditional self-acceptance is encouraging the client to think, I'm a fallible human being who can accept myself even with my flaws. Unconditional other acceptance, not rating others as good or bad based on their behaviors, but rather accepting others for being fallible. And unconditional life acceptance, accepting but not liking all of life's circumstances. And the distinction we want to make is that accepting is acknowledging, but doesn't mean resigning. So we'll encourage our clients to accept and acknowledge the situation that they're currently in, but that doesn't mean not working for them to change it. However, if there is something they can't change, then we want to help them accept that and then define goals and figure out how they want to solve that problem. REBT, much like Korzybski, recognizes the importance of our language. We're very careful to teach our clients the importance of the way they speak to themselves, the importance of their language, as their language tends to reinforce more irrational thinking and amplify dysfunctional emotions and maladaptive behaviors. For example, if we have a client who comes into our office and says, my wife made me so angry, or my friend made me feel really depressed, we'll immediately point out to them, that it isn't these external events, people, or circumstances that have the ability to make us feel a particular way. It's what we're telling ourselves about that event that is leading to our emotional reaction. We might ask them questions such as, you made yourself angry about your wife because you were thinking what? Or, how could your wife make you feel anything? She must be a pretty powerful woman. Another type of disputation we often use is semantic disputation. We'll ask clients to consider what they're saying to themselves and what that actually means. So if they're telling themselves, I can't stand it, I can't stand it, their bodies are going to start to believe and avoid coming into contact with what they believe they cannot stand. REBT teaches clients to correct their faulty and precise language through semantic precision and will actively engage in semantic disputes. What do you mean you cannot stand it? You have, in fact, stood it, or else you wouldn't be able to sit here and tell me about it today. And then this is a quote from Albert Ellis that I thought represents the theory pretty well. Yes, you are a chooser, a constructor of how you react psychologically and fortunately, and you can choose to refuse to create your upset and to work toward more helpful ways of reacting.